In this training today, one of the things that we'll be covering is why great content doesn't sell. If you've been around for any type of time, you may have noticed that the coaches with the best content are often the ones with the worst conversion rates. I'm not sure if anybody has experienced that themselves. And I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I can tell you without a doubt that that is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the coaches with the best content are also the ones usually with the worst conversion rates. In fact, not only is it not a coincidence, it's a structural inevitability. It's inevitable for them. Now, if you're watching and joining us today, here's what I can probably say about you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The first thing I know about you is that you're good at what you do. And I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm, just starting out good, like genuinely, demonstrably good. Like your clients get results. The people who work with you tell their friends, like, your material front and back, and you've built some sort of presentation, whether that be a webinar, masterclass, a workshop, a VSL, and you're trying to use that to turn strangers into buyers, right? You spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of money. You've rehearsed that, you've delivered it. And when you deliver it, people say, "Oh my gosh, this was amazing." How many of you guys hear that at the end of your presentations? "Oh my gosh, this was amazing. Thank you so much." They say this is the best training they've ever attended. How many of you guys have heard that? This is the best training I've ever attended. They fill the chat with fire emojis, right? When the chat's going with fire emojis. "Oh my goodness, this is so good. I'm taking so many notes." And then you make an offer, right? And when you make that offer, the room goes quiet. And very few, if any, most times at all, buy. And it's like, well, they just went from this was great content, but now no one bought. And so you do what any smart person would do, right? Like you're not no just random chip off the old block. Like you're an intelligent person. So what do you try to do? You try to fix it. You add more content, you share better frameworks. You're like, maybe we need to give them some homework. We need to get them engaged, right? You create worksheets and workbooks, templates and action plans, right? You make that free presentation. Tell me if y'all have heard this one before. You make your free presentation. People say, "Oh my goodness, this was more valuable than some people's paid stuff." I mean, I heard that before, right? And as you upgrade that, okay, Ashley, yeah, she knows that, right? And so when you upgrade that, the feedback gets even better. "Oh my gosh, this was incredible. I learned so much." And it just keeps going right. But the whole time your conversion rate doesn't move. So then you try a different approach. You say, "Okay, let me go back to the drawing board," and you switch to a proven script, right? How many of y'all have tried the proven scripts? And I ain't gonna say the names of where these proven scripts come from, right? But you try a proven script, right? You got the five-figure script and the six-figure script, and then you got the seven-figure script and the eight-figure script and the nine-figure script and the 10-figure script, right? There's all these scripts out here that these people try to sell you. You build your origin story, you get your three secrets, you get your offer stack, the close, right? You got all the pieces they told you you're supposed to have. And either when you do that, your presentation either feels fake, like like you're wearing somebody else's clothes. I know that's not one that people like to admit to, right? Anybody ever done a presentation because you had a presentation that's not converting, so you go to the gurus, and the gurus tell you need all these things, right? The scripts and the origin stories and the three secrets and the stack and the close. And so you do all that because you're a good student and you really want to help people. And so you have this new presentation that follows all those things. But the problem is, it feels like you're wearing somebody else's clothes now. It feels fake, right? Or it doesn't feel fake and you perform it perfectly and it still don't convert. And then you go back to the person who sold you the script, and what do they say? Oh, well, you just might not have done it right, right? You must have done it wrong, but you didn't do it wrong. You know you didn't do it wrong. The problem isn't your delivery because your delivery's solid. You're good on camera, right? You're good on stage. People respond to you, and that's what makes it so confusing. Because if the delivery is strong and the content is strong and the offer is strong, then what the hell is wrong? Right? Because that's what it feels like. Can we be honest today? So you tweak some more and you change the opening and you add a testimonial here and you move the offer here and you earlier, then you move the offer later and then you change the price and nothing moves. If any of that relates to you, you are in the right place. And during the rest of our time together today, I'm going to show you why great content all by itself doesn't sell. And I'm going to not just show you why it doesn't sell, I'm going to show you exactly what needs to happen in your presentations so that you can start applying that and you can actually have a presentation that moves the masses. Because the only presentations that matter anyway, when you're a business owner, is the presentations that move the masses. Amen? And the worst part about all that is when you're doing all that changing and twitching, is that privately, right? You probably never say this out loud, but privately, in a voice that you don't share with anyone, you secretly start to wonder, maybe I'm just not good at selling. Maybe I'm just not good at that, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. You are in the right place. And the first thing I need you to understand that you must believe before we go any further, and if you're taking notes, I would write this down, is that I, who, tap your chest on the chest and say me, I am not the problem. The problem is not you. I can guarantee that. I can guarantee that? Because for over a decade, I've helped people from beginners to consummate pros create presentations that move the masses. I'm talking about people who just starting out and people who've been in it for a long time and had presentations that they couldn't get their mama to buy from. And everybody feels like they're different. Everybody feels like their niche is different and their offer is different and the audience is different. And I always think, well, maybe it's working for everybody else. It's not, maybe the problem's me, but the problem's not you. Your content is not too generous. The delivery is not too weak. Your performance is not missing something. Your offer's not broken and you're not bad at selling. The problem, write this down, is that your presentation is doing a different job than you think it's doing. Your presentation is doing a different job than you think it's doing. You say, well, what job is it doing? Right? And see, once you can see what job the presentation is actually doing and what it's not doing, the fix becomes specific, structural, and remarkably clear. And that's what we're going to go over in this video. All right. So here's the assumption that most coaches are operating under with their presentations, right? And I'm going to guess you've probably been operating under too. That if I deliver enough value to the market, to the audience, people will see that my paid offer is worth buying. How many of you guys have had that thought honestly before, right? Like through this presentation, my goal is to show them for free that this was so valuable and I didn't even have to pay anything or I had to pay very little that man, oh my goodness, the paid stuff is going to be so worth buying, right? Like, matter of fact, let's go to just in case you are taking this, let's go to the whiteboard and I'll write this down on the iPad, right? Essentially, what you're saying is that more value, right, equals uh, more trust, right? And more trust equals more sales. Now, even as I'm going over this right now, some of you are thinking, yes, that's it. That's all I need. I need to get more value, so I have more trust because people don't buy from who they don't know, like, and trust. We'll talk about that in a second, right? And this makes intuitive sense. And it's what almost everybody teaches. And for most coaches, it's this assumption that is quietly destroying your conversion rate. So let me ask you something, right? Think about the presentation, one of your presentations where you felt really good, and the audience, the chat, right? The attendees, the people from stage at the conference, right? Um, where your audience says, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible," right? Think about your best one. Was that presentation one of the presentations that converted the lowest? I mean, or was it one of your, let me put it the other way. Not was it one that converted the lowest, was it one of your presentations that converted the highest? That's a better way of putting it. For most coaches, the answer is no. The presentations where people learn the most, what's learn? That's what people say the value is, where people learn the most, right? Were not your highest converting presentations. The presentations where people learn the most are often the ones where people bought the least. That is not random. What is that? You need to write this down. That is a signal. That is not random. That is a signal. It's telling you what? That content quality and conversion are not the same operation. Now, this is very, before we can move on, it's very important that you get this. Content quality and content conversion are not the same operations. Now, they can coexist, but one does not cause the other. In fact, I call this the content value delusion. The content value delusion. It is the invisible operating assumption that the quality of your teaching determines the quality of your conversion, right? So let's now get into and start diving in. Okay, the structural distinction that changes everything once you see it. When someone is attending or watching your presentation, there's two separate operations that are running. How many? Two, right? There's just two. There's two separate operations that are running in the prospect's head, in the audience's head simultaneously. One of those operations is learning. What is that? Operation one is, am I understanding this? That's how I like to put that. Am I understanding this? Okay. Operation two. Now, by the way, um, like the operation one, it's like, am I understanding this? Is this useful? Do I agree with this idea? Right? Okay. Operation two is believing. If you're not writing this stuff down, you're only missing something that is going to make all the difference, right? There's two operations. You have to understand what's going on with the audience you're speaking to in order to get the outcome you want. So you have to understand both of these operations are running simultaneously inside their heads. What's an operation two, right? We talked about as believing. They're saying, can this work for me? And that's really important. Make sure you don't write down, can this work? It's not, can this work? It's, can this work for me? Completely different completely different conversation to the brain. Can this work for me? Is my situation actually fixable? Right? The situation that I'm in. Do I trust this person enough to take the next step? Right? Those are the conversations. Now, these are not the same thing. You can complete Operation One, learning, while Operation Two, believing, stays at zero. Are y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Because y'all quiet today, right? Is this making sense? Like, you can do Operation One and Operation Two, no, it's a no-go, right? Now, here's the trap. Operation number one feels productive. And when the audience says they're learning so much, they're telling you the truth. They did learn. But learning and believing are different neurological events. One fills their notebook, the other changes their behavior. I'm going to say that again. Did I say it too fast? One of these, learning operation, fills their notebook, the other changes their behavior, right? Okay, so um, I'm trying to think of like the second thing that the content value delusion hides from you is that, and you should write this down too, your audience does not, what word did I say? Not. Your audience does not just need to learn something before they buy. They need to believe, we just talked about that, but I'm going to give you the exact things they need to believe because there's five, how many? There's five specific things that they need to believe, right? Not only is there five specific things that they need to believe, there's five specific things in a specific order, right? And content, it doesn't matter how good, doesn't build those beliefs automatically. This is your problem, right? You have to think of it like construction. Content is the raw material. Your content is the raw material. It's the lumber, it's the steel, it's the concrete. But a pile of the best materials in the world doesn't become a building. Why? Well, because I need architecture, right? When all buildings have what? An architect. You need an architecture. You have great content, you have great material, you are legit, but you didn't architect this thing. What is architecture? It's a plan that says which piece goes where, in what sequence, supporting what load. Ah, right? Which piece goes where, in what sequence, supporting what load. And you have incredible raw material. You're just stacking lumber in a field and then wondering why nobody moves in. Well, who's going to move into a field with stacked with lumber? That ain't a house. Are y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Right? So here's the question that this raises for your presentation. Right before I give you the five, because I'm gonna go into the five. I ain't gonna leave you hanging. You know your content's good because the audience is telling you the content's good. But do you know which belief your presentation is building and which one it's accidentally leaving empty? That's what you have to ask yourself. When you're looking at your presentation, you have to ask yourself the rubric that you're scoring and grading this presentation on is not, oh, does this sound good? Is this something that they need to know? It's only which beliefs is my presentation building and which one is it leaving empty? Because what I can tell you after looking at hundreds and thousands of presentations that almost every coach who converts below at least definitely 5%, but I'd say even 10%, is that at least one belief that there's at least one belief that their presentation doesn't touch at all. And it has nothing to do with their content being bad. Their content was never aimed at that belief in the first place. So all you have is a targeting problem. Now, here's the best thing about having a targeting problem, right? You can fix the targeting problem, right? Okay, so now let me give you the five, all right? Um, the first, because I told you there's five specific things, right? Um, So here's what research shows, right? And this is what matches everything I've experienced, right? We talked about the five beliefs that have to form. Now, it's important when you wrote down they have to be beliefs, not opinions, not impressions, beliefs. What are beliefs? They are settled internal conclusions that don't require further deliberation. See, and some of y'all right now, you're saying, when's he going to give us the five? See, and you're missing everything. And that's why your presentation says, how are you going out into the marketplace trying to accomplish something and you don't even know the definition of the thing you're trying to accomplish? because you've heard about beliefs before. But if I ask somebody what is a belief, they don't have a definition for it, right? So we have to create five beliefs. Your presentation has to create five beliefs in order to sell. Not opinions, not impressions, beliefs. What are beliefs? They are settled, internal. This is really important. Internal, can't be external. We'll get back to that. Settled internal conclusions. I love that word. See, because a conclusion is something you arrive at, you come to. And in order for you to have or be at one conclusion before a presentation, and at the end of that presentation be at the other or a different conclusion, someone had to lead you there. Not convince, not manipulate, not trick there. You have to come to that conclusion. But it's not just any settled internal conclusion. It's a settled internal conclusion that doesn't require further deliberation. And see, the reason a lot of y'all get these objections and all these, I got to talk to so and so and let me figure it out, is because your presentation did not lead them to a settled internal conclusion that does not require any further deliberation. Okay, so now let's go into our five specific things. Now that we know what beliefs are. Okay, belief number one. Um, they have to have a self-belief. That's belief number one, right? Specifically, they need a self-belief that like someone like me has done this, and that it's possible for someone who is in my specific situation, right? Someone who's my age, who is this type of business, who's in this type of industry, right? Like it's not enough for them to believe that, oh, some people have done it. It has to be, I have to believe that it's possible for me. So they need self-belief. What's the second one? And I'm gonna show you guys an example of exactly how to do this. Because one of the things that I see nobody teach, I don't care how big they are, how famous that you think they are, nobody's teaching one of the nuggets I'm going to show you here in a second. Because remember, I talked about conclusion, self-settled internal conclusion that does not require deliberation. How do I get someone to come to a conclusion without manipulating, without forcing, without tricking? It's easy. It's literally science. You can engineer it to happen by the way you do your presentation. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to give you an example at the end of this after we have five. So the second, right? They have to have self-belief. But the second belief is they have to have situational belief. See, I told you there's five, but there's three core ones. It's a belief about themselves, a belief about the situations that they find themselves in, and then I'll go ahead and give you the third one right now, which is a belief to the is a belief around the potential solutions, right, that are available. So we've got self-belief, situational belief. Situational belief is a belief that my problem, what I am experiencing, my current reality, isn't mysterious. And if you're taking notes, I like swapping out problem with reality, right? Because when you actually get into and you're talking to your prospects and things like that, they don't really speak like, oh, their problems and pain. That's like marketer language. When you're dealing with anybody, it's just their reality. It's just the way things are. So why is that important? Because I have to show them, whoever I'm speaking to, that their reality, which means what? It means that I must first know what that reality looks like on a day in and day out basis. Not marketer language. What does their reality look like? What happens on a daily basis or what does not happen on a daily basis for me in my current reality, right? They have to believe that their reality has a specific and fixable cause, a specific one but it's also got to be fixable. Why does that matter? Because most people walk around life and they believe that things are just the way they are, that there's nothing to do about it. And they are physically and scientifically unable to move towards anything else if I still have a belief that, and you see how I told you, you need all five of these because I can believe in myself. Let's say I have self belief, the one right before this, which a lot of people don't have. Let's say I have that. But I believe when it comes to this specific reality, this specific situation that I'm in, that there's nothing that can be done, right? So I have to have the belief that this reality isn't mysterious, right? This isn't like happenstance. You have to show in your presentation that this reality that you know almost better than they know is that it's structural and diagnosable, right? Okay, let's move on to the third one. Is this making sense to y'all so far? So the third belief, I already told you guys, is solution belief, which means what? It means that their approach, that this approach, whatever the approach that you're sharing with them, that it makes sense and is different from what they've tried. This is really key. It has to make sense and you have to present it in a way, even if it's very similar or the same as something that they've done, you have to present it in a way that makes them believe that this is different from what I've tried. Why? Because if you're speaking to any type of intelligent audience, what do they say the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different return, right? A different reaction, response, whatever you want to put there. So that's the definition of insanity. So if you're telling me to do something I've already done a million times before, and it's only ever gotten me here, see, and most people don't realize that. They do not differentiate enough. And matter of fact, I've seen people try to make their solution seem like, hey, look, this is what everybody's doing here now these days. And I'm like, oh gosh, no wonder you didn't have many sales. Because if I'm an intellectual person and I'm hearing that, I say, well, I've already tried that, or everybody's already trying that, and it's not working. Everybody's getting the same result here. So you have to present it in a way that helps me understand that it's different from what I've tried, which means I have to get down to the nitty-gritty details. Now, when I say different, it doesn't have to be drastically different. It could be one missing thing that you do differently, right? It could be one thing that either nobody does, or they do out of the right order, or whatever it may be. Depends on what your content is. That when switched around, done this way, removed, added in, has this trickle down effect that makes all the difference. So that I can have a solution belief, a belief that the mechanism is sound. What's our fourth one? So we got self belief, situational belief, solution belief. Now I have to have source belief. Who's the source? You. You're giving the presentation. Now, this is where a lot of people get messed up, especially if people are starting out, or even if you're not starting out, if you've been doing this for a long time, but you feel like there's somebody who's more well known or bigger than you, right? I've been doing this for 13 years. I'm the best at this. I don't care how big someone is. I don't care how many followers they have. I know them all. I am the best at this. You don't have to be bigger or more famous than someone else for your audience to believe source belief. So if you ever think, oh my goodness, right? Everybody should just go, "Woo," right? Here's how you work with source belief. Because what is source belief? It's belief that the person who's guiding me, is credible and trustworthy. Right? Let me just write these down here. These are two criteria. We need credibility, so they need to be credible, and they need to be trustworthy. Now, people assume that when you talk about credibility and trustworthy, this first and foremost, they think that this has to be in general, but it's not in general. When you're speaking to the audience, they have to believe that the guide, you, are credible and trustworthy for them. That's a big difference. We're not even going to go into that today, right? The question that you should be asking is, Coach, If I'm talking to a complete stranger who doesn't know me from Adam, how do I present to them in a way to help them believe that I am credible and trustworthy? Easy. It's so easy. It has nothing to do with followers, any of that. If you can effectively communicate to that person that you understand their world, which is why I said you have to know their reality, right? Think about that. Think about, and let's just go out of business for a second. Let's say, I don't know, are there any parents on here? Where are my parents at? Right? So, obviously, the first person that all of us usually know or think of when you had your child is like, oh, do I know anybody who had a child? Yeah. Who do you know? Your parents, right? And that's where most of us initially lean on, especially if you felt like you had a positive or good experience, you had a great childhood, right? Um, if not, right, or even if you did, but you're going outside of that, who else do you listen to? Do you go and listen to all of your other friends who don't have any children? No, why not? Because they don't understand your world. Who do you go talk to? Who do you ask for advice? Who do you listen to? Who do you believe the information? Because people will give you all types of information, all types of opinions, right? We know that saying, opinions are like, right? Everybody got one. It's someone who understands your world. And so if I can communicate to them effectively that I clearly understand your world, I know what this looks like, I've been here before, then and in this situation, because the only you're not asking them to get married to you. You're not asking them to raise your child and, in the event that you die, like all you're asking them to trust you with is trust me to guide you somewhere I've already been a million times. How can I prove to you that I've been here a million times? I can explain your current reality better than you can explain your current reality. I understand your world so well, and with my eyes closed, I can tell you exactly what you're experiencing, what you're going to experience next, what you experienced previously, and what you need to do next. And if I can communicate that in my presentation, you will have effectively helped them create source belief. Does that make sense? So you don't need to be famous. You don't have a bunch of followers and all these things, right? Sure, those things can help, but that's mainly for ego. How do I know that? Well, because anybody who has any type of following or fame anyway had to start with nothing. And if that was the prerequisite, if you had to be famous and have a major following before you could get anyone to do it, no one would ever get there, right? Isn't it crazy the tricks that the mind plays on us? So source belief. The fifth, right? The fifth belief, and this is really important, and this no one ever usually does this. Your presentation has to give them a fed up belief. What is the fed up belief? It's the belief that the cost of staying where they are exceeds the risk of change. In other words, your content, your presentation has to get them to understand that I cannot afford another year of this. I was uh working with a gentleman just a couple years ago, and he helps men like in their relationships and in their marriage, right? And so he was having some issues, like he felt in his presentation, getting these men to move forward. And so, and I mean, very well spoken. He had, this whole system and all this stuff. And I mean, his presentation was so learning driven. I was like, yeah, I could totally see why they're not buying. But one of the things I told him, I said, even with all these other issues, the main issue is that you are not effectively showing them that the cost of staying where they are is more expensive than the cost of changing. I want you to think about that. And let's go back to this. I want you to think about this. See, most people, when I see them pitch, in their presentation, they only communicate one cost. What is that? They only communicate the cost of changing. Now, part of that cost of changing is the cost to take advantage of your offer, the program, the product, the service, or whatever it may be. And I present to you that if you will stop being deceitful, you said, deceitful? Yeah, deceitful. Like, you're lying by omission. You're not being truthful about the true realities and the cost of their reality. Why? Because you're only showing them one side of the coin. You're only in your presentation saying, oh, it costs this much to work with me. To take advantage of this program, product, or service, it costs this much. It takes this much time, it takes this much energy, it takes this much effort, it takes this much money. But all of that is the cost of change. You only show them one side of the coin. But for anyone to make if I was an ethical and honest person and I'm really trying to empower someone, I don't care. They can stay stuck if they want to. It doesn't matter to me which option they choose. But I'm really trying to empower you to make a decision, to have all the information so you can make a decision. Wouldn't the most ethical and honest thing I could do show you the cost of change? Because yes, it is going to cost time, energy, effort, and money for you to change. And also, shouldn't I show you the cost of staying exactly where you are? Because there's a cost. Usually, nobody does this, and it costs you a small fortune. So I'll give you an example of this. So I was talking to this guy, right? And he deals with these men and these marriages, and so he said, well, so I'm telling him this, and he goes, well, exactly how would I do this? Like, what's that look like? I don't even know what that means. And I said, it's easy. It's like this. So I said something along the line that said, let me ask you guys. I assume the role of him in the presentation. Let me ask you this: how many of you guys have children? Does anybody have children? Right? Because remember, these men are on the brink of divorce. And he said, you can ask them, how many of you guys have children? Hands are going to go up, right? I said, then you can just ask them a series of conversations. I said, okay, because some of you guys right now are thinking, I just revealed whatever his offer was, right? On how we can take your relationship from where it is now and can do a complete 180 so that 6 months from now it's completely different, right? And right now, some of you guys are weighing the cost to take advantage of that offer. I would like to reveal to you, and I told him before you show them the price, show them the offer, but don't show them the price yet. I said, some of you guys are thinking, well, how much does it cost to do that? And I told him this is exactly what I do. I say, grab out a sheet of paper, grab a pen, and I want you to write down the number I'm about to tell you because I'm about to tell you exactly what it cost, right? And I'd say, how many of you guys have a mortgage, right? How many of you guys have a car? How many of you guys X, Y, and Z, right? So they write these things down on the paper, and they say, okay, now I'm ready to tell you exactly how much it cost. Half. And I would just be quiet for a second. He said, what do you mean? I said, it cost half. The cost to not doing something now about your relationship means that in the future, 6 months from now, you're probably going to be headed towards a divorce. How much does a divorce cost? The answer is half. Half of what? Everything you own, right? But I didn't stop there. I said, that's before you get paying the lawyer or anything like that. Now, how many of you guys said you had kids? Okay, let me ask you a question. As a result of you not being able to write your relationship or someone not being able to write their relationship, has that couple moved forward with divorcing and has the ex-wife, right, has the woman ever over some period of time entered into a new relationship with a man? Has that ever happened in the history of life? The answer is yes, right? So you go, yes. Has it ever happened that as a result of you not doing everything in your power to make this relationship right, that you got a divorce, that there's a new partner now involved in the ex's life, and that new partner takes advantage of or sexually abuses the children? Has that ever happened before? As a result of being sexually abused by mom's partner, who mom doesn't really believe this anyway, maybe thinks I'm doing it for attention, has that ever led a kid to have to start going to therapy? How much does therapy cost? As a result of the kid not being able to cope or really handle these things in therapy, and maybe mom not believing, or just the fact that I'm missing dad, or whatever else is going on in school, has that child that was in therapy started turning to drugs? Had that ever happened before? Yes. As a result of using those drugs, has any child ever, as a result of using drugs because they were in therapy to cope with being sexually abused by this new partner that was introduced in my life anyway, because my father didn't do everything in his power to right this relationship, and so my parents split, and so now there's this new person, and my father's not around 24/7, and so this person was introduced into my life, and this person took advantage of my innocence? Has that child ever started using drugs, become addicted to drugs, and had to go to rehab? How much does rehab cost? I didn't stop there. See, are y'all picking up what I'm putting down already? By the way, does anyone see how powerful this is? I said, as a result of that child, because my father, who was there to protect and provide for me, because my father did not do everything in his power to right this relationship. Therefore, my parents split. My mother got a new partner. This new person was introduced in my life who does not have my best interest at heart. They took advantage of me. They sent me to therapy. That got started me getting addicted to drugs. Was sent me to rehab. I'm on a cycle. Has any child ever been addicted to drugs and overdose and died? How much do funerals cost? Right? And so I'm saying this to him, and he goes, "Oh, wow." But I mean, like, okay, I kind of see, but isn't that kind of like manipulation? I said, "What do you mean?" All I did was ask questions. Has that ever happened? Now, we're not saying we want that to happen. We're not saying that's going to happen. The reality, we're all adults. The reality is what? None of us know. We have no idea. It's a possibility. Those are all things that can happen that would cost you time, energy, effort, and money. And all of it is going to cost way more. The divorce, right, is going to cost way more than whatever the cost of the program is. I said, that's not manipulation, it's fact. Now, if that's too heavy for somebody, maybe that person, while they have the opportunity and ability to do something now to prevent that from ever happening, to lower or reduce the chances of that happening, maybe they should do everything in their power, spend all their time, all their energy, all their effort, all their money preventing, doing something now to prevent that from becoming a reality for their children. A possibility for my children. I don't want that to be a 0.00001% chance for my children. Doesn't that put the cost into perspective? He goes, yeah. I said, exactly. So this is what so you guys are seeing. I said, I saw Dr. Rob said, yes, this makes sense. Like, you cannot have a presentation and you're only showing them the cost to change and not the cost of staying the same. And there is a cost for all of you guys' offer. It doesn't matter. The problem is you don't really believe what you say you believe. See, I believe that all of us have some sort of unique gift, talent, knowledge, or expertise. And so I take what I do very seriously. I take this just as serious as it's the cure for cancer. Why? Because all of you have some type of solution for a cancer in somebody's life. And if you were creating the cure for cancer, would you just go and give a presentation? Somebody say, "Oh yeah, I created a cure for cancer. It will cost a lot to make. It's like $250,000, and, um, and they're just like, oh no." right? Would you just let it be there? Or would you be an evangelist for your cause and be like, oh my God, guys, I have the cure for this cancer. If you get, yes, it's going to cost you a lot of time. It's going to cost you a lot of energy. It's going to cost you a lot of effort. It's going to cost you a lot of money. But if you will spend that time, energy, effort, and money, this cancer in your life will be gone. That's why selling is the most ethical profession you can ever take. You can ever, the most ethical skill you can ever master and deploy in your profession. And he said, oh, that's pretty heavy. I said, okay, well, then don't say that and don't help the people. I said, here's another one, right? By the way, I was doing this in a group, so there were some other business owners there, and they all said, right, no, you should say what he said. Like he was worried about what their response to that would be. What I'm not, the truth ain't never been scared of a lie. You don't have to worry. If you were telling the truth, I don't ever have to worry about what exposing the truth to someone is. And if somebody has a problem with you exposing the truth in your content, they don't have a problem with you anyway. And they were unhelpable. You were never going to be able to help that person. What person has a problem with the truth? Ew. Any person that has a problem with the truth, I don't want around me. Go away from me. I wouldn't want you to be my client anyway. Ugh. Right? So a fed up belief, the belief that the cost of staying where they are exceeds the risk of change, and you have to show them that in your presentation. So there's five beliefs. Each one has a name. Each one is testable. And each one either forms during your presentation or it doesn't. There is no middle ground, right? And like we talked about earlier, they don't just need to form these five beliefs, they need to form in order. Why? Because each belief makes the next one possible. If someone doesn't believe someone like me does this, if I have no belief in myself, right? Well, then I can't form a solution belief. Like, why would they evaluate your method if they've already decided it won't work for them? Right? And some of you guys never address the self belief. You never in your presentation present in a way that causes the people who are sitting and attending to believe that they can do it. And so if you don't do that, they can't, like, I can't even evaluate your method properly. Why? Why would I spend that? Why would I waste time evaluating your methodology or your approach when, regardless, I've already decided in advance that that won't work for me? You know, I've instilled this into my children, this delusion into my children. You say delusion? Yeah, everything's a delusion. Did you know that if I show up to a presentation and I say, oh my gosh, I cannot, I'm so excited for this presentation because everybody, when I get done with this presentation, is going to buy. People say, well, you just made that up. You don't know that's true. You're right. But if I also go and I say, oh, I'm not excited for this presentation because nobody's going to buy, I made that up too. Anything I tell myself about a future outcome, I made it up. So either way, I'm going to delusion myself. Why would I delusion myself towards something positive? So I live out these delusions so strongly, right? That anytime something good happens in my life, I say, of course that happens for me. That's who, like, for my family, my wife, my children, right? Of course that happened for us. That's who we are, right? Like when my kid does a good job or wins or scores a touchdown or whatever, it's like, of course. Yeah, we celebrate. And so my kids pick that up now, right? And my daughter, she's 4, my son's 6. And my daughter's really sassy. She's 4, but she thinks she's 44, right? And I can't remember what I said the other day to her, but I said something. And I was, oh, that's really good. And she, yeah, duh. I said, I'm gonna love that, right? Like, duh. That's of course that's what's supposed to happen for me. Duh, right? Self belief. That it doesn't matter what the situation is, right? Like my wife has a level of belief in me because I have a level of belief in myself that I've demonstrated over the 11, 12 years we've been together. That doesn't matter what situation we find ourselves in. Like, duh. Like, we'll be okay. Why? Because that's what we do. It doesn't matter what the situation is. We win. We come out on the other end, right? Winning, always. So you need a self belief first. Then that so that they can form a solution belief. If someone hasn't formed a situation belief, which is my problem has a specific fixable cause, then I can't have a fed up belief, right? Why? Because I can't be fed up with a situation that I haven't fully diagnosed. That's what I was kind of showing you guys there. I was fully painting the picture of what this actual situation is. Here's your current reality. That if you keep on this course, that sometime from now, right, and things stay the same, you will not be married any longer. And that's going to cost you all of these things, right? And so this is why you can have a presentation where every individual piece is excellent, great stories, strong proof, right? And this is what a lot of you guys, this is why a lot of you guys are here. This is what I hear all the time. Our offer's good and it still doesn't convert. Yeah, the pieces are good, but the sequence is broken. And a broken sequence means that the later beliefs never form because the earlier ones weren't there to support them. They're load bearing. And so here's a diagnostic question for you guys, right? It's the question that changes everything about how you evaluate your presentation. When you're looking at this presentation that you've planned out, this content, right? Even if it's social media content, here's a diagnostic question. For each section of your presentation of your content, ask which of the five beliefs is this section building? Not is this section good, not does this flow well, not is this interesting, but which specific belief does my audience form because of these slides? I remember a couple years ago, there was this guy, he's a well-known speaker around the industry, really good speaker. He paid me to be mentored by me, right? And one of the issues he was having is he would go around and people always say, "Oh, you're a phenomenal speaker," right? But it wasn't converting to sales, and he couldn't understand why. And um, and so he came to me, and I told him, I said, "Yeah, well, you're a much better speaker than I'll ever hope to be." I said, "But I'm not a speaker. I don't even understand what the concept of being a speaker is." I'm like, "Well, I don't, what does that mean? You've been speaking since you're a child. Congratulations, you're a speaker, right?" But I said, "Yeah, you're a way better speaker than I'll ever hope to be." And I told him, "And I will sell circles around you on every stage, every event that you ever do." Why? Because the two are not the same, right? Because when I'm doing a presentation, I'm not asking, is this section good? Does it sound good? Does it flow well? Is it interesting? I'm specifically focusing on the purpose of the presentation. And so I'm asking myself, what specific belief does my audience form because of this thing that I'm introducing? And here in a second, I'm going to show you guys how like engineered when I'm doing a presentation, everything is. Just so you can see one, how powerful it is, two, the care and intention that you need to, and hopefully it's an example for you to be able to do in your presentations. Because you cannot be lazy with language. You cannot waste language, right? And if you're auditing each section of your presentation and you can't answer that question, which of the five beliefs this section is building, right? Well, guess what? That section is just pleasant noise. It sounds good, it feels productive, but it's diluting your chain instead of building it. And here's a fundamental truth that you know about life in general. Every day, something is either getting better or it's getting worse, period. Not sure if you guys know this or not, right? Every day, you either get stronger or you get weaker. Every day, I either get healthier or I get less healthier, right? There's no in between. You do not stay the same every single day. Nothing stays the exact same. It either progresses or regresses. So, same in your presentation. If I'm going through my presentation, I'm auditing that, and I can't specifically say that right here, this section, this sentence, this thing I'm introducing is right, adding it, it's like signaling, it's pointing, it's connecting to this belief, then it's making your presentation worse. It's not, there's no in between. Is this making sense? And so this is the difference between content logic and conversion logic. Content logic says, what does my audience need to know? And that's where a lot of you guys start. And that produces presentations organized by topic. Here's the framework, here's the case study, here's the Q&A. Conversion logic asks, what does my audience need to believe about themselves, the situation, the potential solution to those situations, right? About me as the source, and what fed up beliefs do they need to have, right? And so that's what conversion logic has. And conversion logic produces presentations organized by belief sequence. So, right out the gate in any presentation, because these beliefs are in order, what is the first part of my presentation should it be doing? Building what? Self belief. Why? So that the audience stays open. Then it should build situational belief. Why? So that they understand what their real problem is. Then solution belief. Why? So they can trust the mechanism. Then source belief, so they trust the guide. Then fed up belief, so they're ready to act. Most people, we already talked about, most people skip that and just go to their pitch, and they're like, "Oh, nobody bought." Well, you didn't get them ready to act, right? And so the same content can can serve either logic, conversion or content logic, right? Like a case study, if it's organized under content logic, is proof that my method works. That same case study, organized under conversion logic, is proof that someone in your situation with your doubts and your starting point succeeded with this approach. Same raw material, completely different architectural function. This is what people pay me money to do, right? People pay me to come help them reconstruct their presentations from scratch. We're not usually creating new content. I can't create new content. Your reality is your reality, your content is your content. I'm an architect. We can architect it differently to bear the load, the weight of the audience, right? So that we engineer the outcome, we cause it to happen, to come to conclusion. And I'm gonna show you guys that here in a second, right? So, like, can y'all see now, like, why the content value delusion is so destructive for all these like entrepreneurs who are the best at teaching? When you organize your content under logic, what happens? You teach brilliantly, your audience learns, right? That's operation one. Learning runs at full steam ahead. They understand your framework, they can explain it back to you, and they feel like they've gotten massive value. And because they feel like they've gotten massive value, you've also caused them to feel complete. Like right now, you guys probably feel like, oh my goodness, maybe you're getting some ahas and you're like, man, I feel so complete. Don't worry. In the next few minutes, I'm going to help you understand that you're not complete. Why? Because I'm ethical and moral. I would not be doing my ethical and moral duty if I led you to believe everything is complete. You have everything, and then sent you out there, and then you don't actually have everything to do it completely, right? You're not complete because then you're going to try it. It's not going to work. You're going to get depressed, and you're going to be in the same cycle. Well, then I didn't really serve you. I deceived you, right? And so they feel like they already have what they need. Your content was so good that it accidentally replaced the desire for your offer with the feeling of already having the answer. Did I say that too fast? This because this is the reality of most people that go out there and present. Most people in their content, in their presentations, your content is so good that you accidentally replaced the desire for your offer with the feeling of already having the answer. You did that. You caused that to happen. Why? Well, because you spent so much time on trying to make sure your content was so good and you succeeded. And now you get the results that come with that, which is little to no sales. Like you didn't underwhelm them into not buying, you overwhelmed them into thinking they didn't need to. How many of you guys know that if someone were to consume all of your freely available content, 80 to 90%, you're 80 to 90% confident that if they consumed every free content you had out there, they would most likely not experience the full transformation that you provide in your paid programs, products, or services. Okay, so if you know that, why would you be going out to the marketplace, having this presentation, and causing them to feel like they don't need it? When you know with 80 to 90% certainty, they're not going to get the transformation. Okay, so let me give you three quick diagnostics you can run on any presentation. You can take your current presentation right now, and we can do this. You can run these diagnostics on it, right? And then I'm going to show you an example of engineering and architecture at its finest, right? Because you don't just do this on a macro level, you do it on a meso and micro level as well. And I'll explain to you exactly what that means in a second, right? But I'm going to give you these diagnostics. Okay, so diagnostic number one, right? The feedback paradox. When your audience says, "Oh my gosh, I learned so much," but they don't buy, this is diagnostic one, that is not a compliment about your offer. We talked about it before. That is a structural signal. It means operation one, the learning, is running at full power, and operation two, belief formation, isn't engaged. And so the applause is evidence of the gap. It's not proof the gap doesn't exist. Diagnostic number two, the proof mirror. Look at every piece of proof that's in your presentation. For every piece of proof, you need to ask yourself, does this prove the method works? Or does it prove that someone like my audience succeeded with this method? Another way to put that is someone in the situation or the current reality of my audience succeeded with this method. If all of your proof demonstrates that the method and none of it like demonstrate to reflects your audience's starting point, your audience's doubts, your audience's situation, then you're building solution belief while starving self-belief. And so your audience will walk away thinking, okay, that's a great method, just not for me. And you guys have done things about that in your own life. There's things in different relationally, physically, emotionally, financially, whatever it may be, spiritually, in your life that you go, well, I know that works, but it just doesn't work for me. That's great. That's really great for them. It just wouldn't work for me, right? Diagnostic three, the quiet room test, right? I want you to imagine that your presentation delivered, right? Your presentation is like it's just plain text. There's no music, no energy, no polish in delivery. It's just plain text, right? Does the transition to your offer in plain text feel like the most natural sentence in the presentation? That's a diagnostic, right? Most people, you can tell when the pitch is coming. It's like this big thing. It's not natural, right? It feels like this sudden left turn. It's all like jerky. It feels like a pivot. Why does it feel like that? Well, it feels like that because there's a belief gap between your teaching and your offer. The chain has a missing link. And so your delivery energy has been masking it, and that's why it feels that way, right? So those are three diagnostics that you can run on your presentation. And like they're not the full engineering discipline, but they're three lenses like from a much deeper system. Meaning there's many more diagnostics that I would run through or go through in a presentation. But those are three lenses that like if you just take those three and ran them on your presentation today, you're gonna see things you've never seen before. And that's the shift. From performing a presentation you don't fully understand to seeing it as an architecture you can diagnose. And that's what I was trying to do today because I want you guys to be able to stop feeling so lost or handcuffed when an outcome's not happening and you're like, well, I don't know what's going on, right? You can easily see, oh yeah, I can see in this architecture. Like when I audit people's presentations, you can ask my wife, I've been hundreds of them. I can listen to them, I can turn them on instantly. I can go, oh my gosh, I've been live in rooms where people were presenting. They started out 5, 10 minutes in, and I just know my wife, oh, they're gonna make no sales. And been 100% accurate, right? Why? Because I'm special? No, because once you see and understand the architecture, you can't unsee it. So let me show you guys an example of this, right? Um, this is actually too, um, we actually put this, I'm gonna switch over the screen here. So what you're seeing here is actually on my website, right? And I'll move myself out just so you guys can see fully. Um, so this is from my website, and this is talking about like my methodology, which we call frame, right? Now, frame is an acronym. Here, there it is, right? The frame method. And so I'll break that down here in a second, but it's all about um like the science and psychology of human behavior. Because again, I don't know how people go out in the place and they're doing presentations and you don't understand the science and psychology of human behavior. It's like it's literally like driving on the road with a blindfold on. It's like you don't know what you're doing. But I stopped here because so when we're talking about engineering these beliefs, right? You do this on a macro, a meso, and a micro level. What's that mean? Well, the macro is the full presentation, right? So, of course, you do this on a full presentation level. But then you also do this on a meso level. What's the meso level? The meso is each section in that presentation. But then you also do it on a micro level. What's the level? Each sentence. Each sentence is should be a frame sentence. I'll give you guys the acronym in a second, right? Well, here, I'll just do it right here because it's below, right? So frame is an acronym. It stands for focus, frame, align, move, and empower, right? So, excuse me. All my presentations that I engineer or when people come to me, I help you have a frame presentation, right? And these are steps that are done in a specific order on a macro, meso, and micro level over and over and over again. It's not something that you do once, it's something that continuously happens from the moment you open the presentation to the moment you close the presentation, right? I'm gonna give you an example of this. Um, so here's a perfect example. You may not be able to see this, but I'll read it to you. So this is actually a quote from me. It's from one of my presentations. And in this quote, right, it's from one of my presentations where I start to pitch. And during that pitch, in this presentation, I ask the audience when I'm pitching, I say, by show of hands, how many of you, your first thought in the morning is, what am I going to do, post, or say to grow my business today? Right. So I ask you guys the same exact thing. How many of you guys, when you wake up in the morning, like one of the first things you think about is, what am I going to do, post, or say to grow my business today? Okay. So let me ask you another question then. How many of you think that Apple, the $4 trillion behemoth that they are, how many of you guys think that Apple wakes up on a daily basis and they huddle up? They say, huddle up. And they ask each other, hmm, what are we going to do, post, or say to grow Apple today? How many of you guys think that happens at Apple on a daily basis, right? Or do you believe that Apple has a system that they use and apply and deploy in their business that predictably produces profits even while they're sleeping, right? Okay, so this is from a presentation of mine, right? Now, what's interesting about this is in this uh, like couple sentences, right? It's basically three sentences. And I can't even, I don't want to get into why they're all questions, right? We don't have time. That's for a different presentation. So the frame, the entire framework, that engineering of belief is happening right now. Now, before I go over this, what did we say early in the presentation a belief was? It is a settled internal, right? You told you underline, circle, star that word. It's a settled internal conclusion that does not require deliberation. How do we cause the audience to have an internal conclusion, right? So here's an example of that. So the fact, right, is that what? In this sentence, the fact is that the prospect, the audience, wakes up thinking about what to post, what to do, what to say, right? That's undeniable, right? They're doing this. The people I'm serving, when I speak to them, they all raise their hand. They say, "Yes, I do that." By the way, when I say that, what am I doing? I'm describing their current reality, right? What's the other fact? The other fact is that Apple, which is a $4 trillion company, clearly doesn't operate this way, right? Well, that's interesting. Huh. Apple doesn't operate this way. So just by positioning that question the way I did, what is the frame? Well, the first question frames the audience waking up and asking, "What do I do, post, or say to grow my business today?" It frames it as what? As an issue. Now, did I tell you, hey, if you wake up on a daily basis and you're asking yourself, "What do you do, post, or say to grow your business today?" You have a problem. That's not what you should be doing. Did I tell you that? No, I didn't. And I can, that's up for a whole nother lesson on why I don't usually tell people anything. Why? Because I'm an architect who knows what he's doing. So the first question that I ask, it frames that question as a problem. So what does that mean? It means the audience comes to the conclusion that waking up and asking myself, "What do I do, post, or say to grow my business today?" which maybe seem like a noble or right thing to do as an entrepreneur, is actually not a question you should be asking yourself. How did I get them to come to that conclusion? By making the Apple comparison that makes the contrast undeniable. That no serious business operates by scrambling on the day for what to do, post, or say that day. You guys see how powerful that is? Is this making sense? I usually break down this stuff and like in like paid like high mastermind and stuff, right? Like this isn't a sentence. I asked one question and I got the audience to come to a conclusion instantly by asking one question. So, excuse me. So I got them to come to this conclusion, right? By striking that contrast. Now, what do I cause them to focus on? Well, their attention gets directed to what? The gap between how they operate and how the most successful company on earth operates, right? Like by the structure of the question, the conversation of the content, the structure of the content causes them in their subconscious to focus on this gap. And then the third question points to what fills that gap. Because what's the third question say? It says, or does Apple have a system? So what's it pointing to that fills the gap? A system. Now, because we did that, what micro belief is formed in the audience? They come to the conclusion. Remember, I didn't say any of this to them, but they effectively come to the conclusion of what? Oh my gosh, I don't have a system. Either I don't have a system or I have a system, but it's not worth a darn because every day I have to ask or figure out what am I going to do, post, or say to grow my business today. I'm on this hamster wheel, right? I do not have a system that's reliable enough, or I don't have a system at all, and Apple does. And there's this whole bit I go into that talks about how strong and predictable Apple's system is, right? That I'm not going to go into now, that I do into the pitch. And so they go, "Oh my gosh, that's the difference." And so the micro belief becomes what of them? I need a system that can predictably produce profits. When I use this in the pitch, what do you think it is that I'm pitching the people on? A system that predictably produces profits, right? But they don't believe they need that because I told them you need that. Because who am I? They're strangers most times. They came to the conclusion themselves. That is now a settled internal conclusion that they came to that does not require deliberation. They now believe they need a system. By the way, it's not mind trick. Someone who doesn't believe they need a system isn't going to believe they need a system, right? And that's okay. They've been wrong before, they can be wrong again. I crack myself up, right? Right? But like, it's not mind control, but an intelligent person is probably going to come to the conclusion, oh my gosh, I need a system, right? I believe that the audience, when you speak to them, is decide if this is for me and if it's not for me. And if it is for them, I believe that an intelligent person will do everything in their power to take advantage of the offer. And if they decide it's not for them, I believe an intelligent person will do everything in their power to not take advantage of the offer. Right? Now, what's the feeling that belief now causes? Well, the feeling is discomfort, but it's discomfort that gives way to clarity. Why? Because that third question transfers their pain into direction. So they have an answer. They have, and I don't even have time to talk about like how the brain works and why this like provides the brain so much relief. Brain goes, oh my gosh, I have an answer. It's this system, right? And so then what's the action? What's the function? They nod. Yes, this makes sense, right? They lean in and they want to know what that system looks like. Okay, I need a system that predictably produces profit. What's that look like for me? What would need to be required? How do I know? Right? All those things. And that's what we go in the pitch. And so that micro function does what? It feeds the next chain. So I just wanted to show you guys that because that's three sentences that in a presentation, if you were auditing it, most people would completely overlook it. And that's why I told you, I am not, and I'm not saying this to like brag, um, because like Lord knows I have my flaws, right? And every good thing about me came from God anyway. But like I don't, it doesn't matter who you're going to or how big their audience is. Nobody's teaching this. Why are they not teaching it? Because they don't know it, right? Like that is how precision like your presentation should be. And if someone was auditing that presentation, they wouldn't highlight that section at all. But in that three sentences, I showed you how I use the entire frame methodology to do what? To create all five beliefs here, right? The beliefs we talked about to get a self belief, a situational belief, a solution belief, a source belief, and a fed up belief, right? Man, I'm sick of not having a system. I'm sick of waking up and every day and thinking, what am I going to do post my business today? And that was just in the sentence. And all those sentences make up a section. And the entire section, I put those sentences in that section because the section itself is trying to create a certain belief. And then those sections create a presentation, right? And so you need that level of engineering and architecture. And when you do that, and you take that architectural, engineering approach, you will no longer go to the marketplace and you won't even be focused on trying to have great content because I don't know what people mean when they say great content anyway. And if you are trying to score great content, at least you'll have a new rubric because great content is content that gets the masses to move. And you will never get the content that moves the masses. You'll never have an audience large enough. If you can't get 3 people to move, you can't get 30 people to move, you can't get 300 people to move. Does that make sense?
I took what you said, totally revamped what I was doing. Didn't have to get on a sales call. That was my first time ever, so that was super cool.
I paid him about a year ago to teach me one strategy, how to close without a sales call, phoneless selling. And since then, everything has just taken off. We did $65K in a week, and me and my business partner are now pacing between $100,000 and $150,000 for this month, which is just insanity.
Other coaches that are talking about phoneless sales, but I look at their business and I'm like, do I really want to have this business? They're on social media all the time. They're doing training after training. They have 5,000 courses. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so you're proving that you don't have to have that business model. You don't have to do sales calls. You can really be leveraged.
And I am coming off of my highest month ever. Sales in both contracted and cash collected. So specifically, I added over $100,000 in new sales. I didn't have to go through all these one-on-one calls. I didn't have to do any of that, which takes a lot of time. You know, a lot of people say no. I didn't do any of that. No phone calls. We sold to everyone in a group. Boom.
I used it. I made $50,000 in less than 24 hours. I've never made that much money in a day. I mean, I've had very successful businesses, but I've never made that much so easily in a day.
You follow his steps and you do exactly what he tells you to do and how he tells you to do it, and success.